Actually, both are on mute now.
Yes.
Okay. Aisha, we can
So,
start.
Okay. On the words
should
of
I?
Noble T.G. says, there is no tomorrow and there was no yesterday. If you truly want to accomplish your goals, you must engulf yourself in today. Good evening to one and all present here. I am Aisha Mohammed Talbir, student of 1st DCBA HRM, and I'll be the host for today's session. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all for this lecture series. Yesterday, we marked the start of our international lecture series, and we had Mr. Ravindran Kasturi, the CEO of Langil Labour Contract Cooperative Society, with formal inauguration. And today we are more than privileged to have Ms.Soma Basu, the researcher of Tampere University of Finland, where we'll be discussing on one of the many goals of sustainable development, that is decent work and economic growth. But before we start our session, it's significant to involve the Almighty. Therefore, I invite Amrin for the prayer.
കാണായ ലോകങ്ങളൊക്കെയും സൃഷ്ടിച്ച് കാത്തരുളിയിടുന്ന തമ്പുരാനെ മാമക വീടിൻ്റെ മാണിക്യ ദീപമേ മാനസക്കൂരിരുൾ മായ്ക്കുക നീ ധർമ്മവും സത്യവും കാരുണ്യവുമല്ലോ കർമാവേ നിൻതിരു വിഗ്രഹങ്ങൾ നിർമ്മലമാകുമീ ദിവ്യസ്വരൂപങ്ങൾ ഓർമ്മയിലുണ്ടാകവേണമെന്നും കാണായ ലോകങ്ങളൊക്കെയും സൃഷ്ടിച്ചു കാത്തരുളിയിടുന്ന തമ്പുരാനെ മാമക വീടിൻ്റെ മാണിക്യ ദീപമേ മാനസക്കൂരിരുൾ മായ്ക്കുക നീ മാനസക്കൂരിരുൾ മായ്ക്കുക നീ.
Thank you, Amrin. Without further ado, let's start our session. I would like to invite Ms. Priya Suresh, Faculty of Human Resource Management, and our beloved tutor to give an introduction about today's session.
Good evening, everyone. Day before, we had begun our international lecture series on UN Sustainable Development Goals, which was officially inaugurated by Sri Ravindran Kasturi, Group CEO of ULCCS Limited, following with an enlightening session on skill development. Today, we have an eminent personality who have joined with us to give the session on one of the significant SDG goals, that is decent work and economic growth. And it's a great honor for me to introduce and welcome the chief guest of this evening, Ms. Soma Babu. She is an investigative journalist, Faculty of IT and Communication Services, and she has completed BA English Honours from St. Xavier's College, MA Mass Communication from Guru Jamshedpur University, postgraduate diploma from Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Delhi, MPhil from Jamia Millia Islamia, and currently pursuing doctoral research in media studies at Tampere University, Finland. Ms. Soma has several prestigious journals awards, including the Kozhikode Memorial Award for the International Journalism 2017, the UN Correspondence Association Global Prize for coverage of climate change 2016, Best Article Award for reporting on the state of victims of armed violence by President India International Committee of Red Cross. It's a great pleasure to have you with us this evening, ma'am. And I also welcome the head of the department, Ms. Alina Joy, faculties, and all the students joining the session today. And once again, a warm welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shriya. Thank you so much, Alina. This is a real honor for me. Uh, Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank
I
you
think
so
you
much,
can
ma'am,
just ignore
for
the
your
echo
words.
thing.
Sorry, ma'am, it's not clear.
Uh,
Aisha, you can
Next,
continue.
it's my honor to invite our honorable chief guest, Ms. Soma Basu, to give a talk on the matter.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you so much. Well, before I begin my talk, I would request everybody to please mute their microphone. Otherwise, there will be, I think I can hear myself from several directions. So that's going to present a little bit of distraction. So please mute yourself. Uh, and before I start my talk, I would also like to tell you that this is not really a typical lecture or a talk. I would really like to hear from you all. This is an interactive session. And my only motivation, or what should I say, an incentive to come to these talks is to interact with the students. Because, in every talk that I go to, I learn so much from you all, because you all are our future, right? So if you have any questions, if there is anything, any kind of reflection that you have, you want to share, raise your hand. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see this option, raise hand option. You can raise your hand. Feel free to type your comments in the comment box, and then we can during the question answer session, we can look at it, and then we can have a good discussion. So yeah, please feel free to stop me if you think I'm going too fast, or if you think that something is not clear. Please feel free to stop me. All right. I have made a very small presentation, and I'll just try and see if I can share it. um, just a second. I'm back. Okay. So I was just, it asked for, asked me to change my security settings. So, yes, I think my presentation. All right. So, today's topic is decent work and economic growth. And when you look at all the topics, when you look at all the goals that we have, all the SDGs that we have, this one, uh, how many of you find this one, how many of you thought that this one was going to be the most boring? Could you raise your hand very honestly? Nobody's going to judge you. How many of you thought this is going to be very boring? Anyway, I can talk about myself. uh, Whenever there was anything, and I see my very good friend Shine Jacob is also here. Welcome, Shine, if you can hear me. So whenever anybody would, if I came across any such topic like economy, business, I always kind of tried to excuse myself, because I was very, very scared of numbers. I was anyway bad in maths, always. So this was something that I was always scared about. But actually, economics is not that difficult or complicated. It touches upon different kinds of aspects which we see around us. So there is economics in the food we eat, there is economics in the clothes we wear, there is economics in the environment we live in, the kind of work that we do, studies, everything that you see around yourself, your entire ecosystem. It's like is weaved with different kind of subjects that we are studying in college, and one of them is economic. So, what basically is SDG? What are these SDGs? SDGs are basically, and this is something that you must be hearing in all the lectures, in this lecture series. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a set of 17 global goals adopted by all UN member states in 2015 as part of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. What is 2030 agenda? The deadline, the year by which all these goals should be accomplished is 2030. And as you can see, there are a number of these small icons, there are a number of goals. And on each goal, there will be an expert to talk to you about. Well, one of them is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, something that I will be talking about today, industry innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, strong institutions, partnerships for global goals. So while first half of my talk is going to focus on what exactly decent work and economic growth means, when when I talk about the examples or when I discuss the examples of this, what are the implications of this, then you'll see that a lot of goals kind of, they merge together. So, for example, you cannot really separate poverty from good health and well being. You cannot separate decent work and economic growth from quality education or gender equality. When we talk about decent work also involves gender equality. It also involves reduced inequality. And if there is decent work and economic growth, then there is going to be peace, justice, and strong institution, right? This is also very, very closely related to industry innovation and infrastructure, because if there is good industry, good innovation and infrastructure, that means that you can sustain decent, you can offer decent work to people and you can sustain economic growth. And then this is tied up with responsible consumption and production, which again, ties up with clean water and sanitation. Because in production, if you're not treating the wastewater, if you're not taking care of disposal of harmful chemicals from your factories, for example, or the waste that your industries are generating, then that affects, clean water and sanitation, right? So all these goals, they do not exist in isolation, but together they work in tandem for overall development to give a good quality of life to everybody. Now, I asked that question why, how many of you think that this topic is going to be boring? Because there was, uh, in fact, this particular topic, this decent work and economic growth, there was a recent survey by Campaign Asia, and they asked people, or people from Gen Z, and I assume all of you are Gen Z here, uh, except me and our teachers who are probably millennials. Uh, and the question was, which UN Sustainable Development Goal mattered the most to Gen Z? And while overall across the world it was found, 90% of people belonging to Gen Z said that they found decent work and economic growth most relevant, which is obvious because as we complete our studies, obviously we are thinking about opportunities, where we are going to work, what kind of industry we'll work in. Maybe we want to be artists, and a work of an artist is an unorganized sector, by the way. Some of the artists, of course, not all. And this is also something that we'll be talking about. Then reduced inequalities. That was the overall baseline, right? Overall. In Australia, most of the Gen Z found life below water, obviously because Australia, the location and climate action. In China, it was 90% reduced inequalities and 94% decent work and economic growth. In Hong Kong, again, you can see the figures. So most of the, Gen Z for but across the world, people of your age group generally find these kind of topics more interesting. This is something that they're really passionate about. And why is it that? Why is it so? So, to understand that, we also have to understand what exactly decent work and economic growth means. So, this is goal number 8 in the list of SDGs, which aims at promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. And it's made up of 12 targets and 17 indicators. There are 12 targets, which covers very broad topics through measures of economic growth and productivity, development oriented policies, what kind of policies exist within a country, resource efficiency in consumption and production. Uh, are we over consuming certain resources? How are we managing our production? Is our production vis-a-vis consumption balanced or not? Employment and labor rights, youth conditions, access to financial services. And this also means implementation of indicators focus on the mobilization of aid for trade and the development of a global youth employment strategy. And that is extremely important because right now our demography is kind of driving the world's workforce. The people of our age group, it's 28 to 30 year 24 to 38 years of age. There are statistics which say that people of this age group are actually running the world, to put it very, very straightforwardly or simplistically. Anyway, so goal 8, this United Nations targets and indicators, what are these? It seeks to provide equal opportunities and right for all workers, regardless of gender, age, socioeconomic status, and to support the growth of micro, small, and medium sized enterprises. The goal also aims to improve infrastructure, innovation, and technological development, and to support the transition to a green economy. What is a green economy? Can anybody answer? And by the way, I'm extremely impressed. I must tell you, it's 7 p.m. in India, and you all are probably 7:30 now, and you all are, working in front of your laptops and mobile phones. It's hats off to you because it's pretty late. But still, if you are up to it, if anybody wants to volunteer, can somebody explain what green economy is? Okay, never mind. Green economy is a kind of economy where uh, you use sustainable means, reduce dependence on coal, for example, on fossil fuels. You reduce waste production. You are heading towards an economy which depends on green power, uh, and policies that are very conservation friendly and environment friendly. So that's the kind of green economy. It's hydropower, then uh, solar energy, wind energy, and so on, right? The objective of this goal is to ensure that everyone has access to decent work, which provides adequate income, social protections, and opportunities for personal development. Now, every time we are using this word decent work, don't you think this word decent is very subjective? I mean, something that is decent for me might not be decent for you, and vice versa, right? So, decent is there is no benchmark of decency, right? Uh, I mean, for somebody who's very, very traditional, for them, these benchmarks of decency could be, different from somebody who maybe is ultra modern, right? Did somebody type anything? Okay. So decency is a very subjective word, but all these kind of plans that we have or goals that we have at various diplomatic levels or various international levels, there's certain amount of self regulation or certain amount of judicious thinking is involved when we are talking of so decency cannot be same, decent work cannot be same for US vis-a-vis India or Bhutan. Every it also depends on our perception of decency or decent work. Also depends on the kind of culture I come from, the socio-economic condition, the socio-cultural condition of my country, right? So every country has different kind of benchmark and different indicators for that. But within India, if you look at various states, then Kerala, your state, is the topmost performer, which is a front runner in inching closer, in getting closer to achieving these goals. So Kerala has, as you can see, India's average score is 66. If you were to kind of measure, how much India has achieved in terms of getting closer to the goals, the average score is 66, and Kerala is ahead with 75. And at the bottom, we have Bihar, Jharkhand, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh. But when we compare India with our neighbors, and this report is from 2021, this is the annual SDG scores for from 2015 to 2021 for South Asia by a country, and this data is from Sustainable Development Report 2021. You can look at the comparison. Where do we stand? The annual regional average SARC SDG attainment, if you can, you may call it that, is 63.45 uh, in 2021, 63.58. This dark blue line is 2021. And then you can compare it with other South Asian countries. And this is India. So overall, India is not doing that great, even though there are a lot of policies that are in place now. But in India, there's always been an issue that we have a lot of policies, but the major challenge is implementation of those policies, whether those policies are implemented properly or not, because we have population burden, we have a burden of pollution, we have a burden of health. Again, this all these tie up to the other goals. We also have a lot of corruption in the country, and different kinds of turmoils and conflict. So and India is, anyway, compared to all other countries here, I think India is the largest, in terms of geography and population. So it's a very stressed country anyway in terms of resources. But anyway, we aren't doing that well. And when we are talking about any kind of sector, any kind of economic growth, we have it's kind of divided into two sectors, mainly formal sector and informal sector. What is formal sector? Formal sector is basically a sector, a working sector, which is accounted for. So government knows how many people work in it. They can be covered by insurance, they can be paid pension, they can be given health benefit. There is some kind of data about these people, but then that is just 10%. Okay. uh, in the working economy, what is informal sector? And India has 90% informal sector. uh, we have non-agricultural employment, and the majority of workers in this sector do not have access to social security benefits such as pension, health insurance, and paid leave. For example, if we have a house help, uh, she's somebody who belongs to the informal sector. Uh, she does not get any kind of health insurance, or if she's not working, we don't give her paid leave, unless, of course, it was during COVID that a lot of people stepped up. A lot of people who hired house help understood that it was a great, um, what should I say? It was a very bad, terrible times, and a lot of people kind of did whatever they could in their small capacities to help people employed with them, their drivers, their house helps, and so on, the gardeners. But still, the majority of people, there was complete apathy, and these people had to face a lot. And they did not have any kind of, formal coverage, any kind of pension or health insurance, that if you stay back at home, because obviously during the pandemic, they were not being allowed to move to, visit residential societies to work. Or everybody was kind of, there were movement restrictions, and everybody was locked inside. So these people, they had nowhere to go. Again, the informal sector refers to the part of the economy that is not regulated by the government and operates outside formal legal and regulatory framework. It includes a wide range of economic activities such as street vending, domestic work, agriculture, and small scale manufacturing. And informal structure accounts for approximately 45% of India's GDP. And this is a very stark fact, in India. In fact, Indian economy is run by informal sector. Even if you look at how economies have shaped, in fact, even cities are shaped according to economy. So the older part of the city is probably, in your own cities, if you observe, the heart of the city is something. But then, if you look at the different markets or the business centers that have emerged, say, a place where you can get all kind of computer parts, or a place which is known for very good tailors, or a place where you get a very good, there are a lot of, these stalls, food stalls, street food stalls, and all. So these are all informal sectors. They are very small shops, and they are not really formally recognized by the government. They are not regulated by the government. They operate outside formal legal regulatory framework, but at the same time, they are the backbone of that place's economy. Even in Delhi, there is a very good book by Ravi Sundaram, and he's in CSDS. Uh, and he talks about how New Delhi was shaped, how people who were pushed to the fringes, near the river bank, out of the elite Lutyens Delhi, actually emerged as business centers. And then they reclaimed, for example, there is a very interesting story about Palika Bazaar, and the name of this book is Pirate Modernity. uh, if you ever, it's written in a little complicated language, for students, of bachelors might find it a little complicated, but uh, if you're patient, it tells fascinating stories of how economies, informal economies, can shape cities, and a lot of culture around it. So anyway, informal sector accounts for approximately 45% of India's GDP. Uh, and Barbara Harris White, and she's a very senior professor. She's economist and emeritus professor of development studies in Oxford University. She has said that informal economy, in fact, is the Indian economy. The rest simply could not work without it. So informal economy is something that is driving everything, is the driving force. Now, why India hasn't been able to regulate the informal sector effectively? Regulation and monitoring is extremely important, because to understand, to do something for somebody, what's the first thing that you need to do? You need to know that this thing or this person exists, right? So if there is certain kind of work or certain kind of business or certain kind of profession that people are engaging in, the first step before you build any kind of measure for its protection would be to know that, okay, this exists and these many people are working in this sector, right? The major hurdles have been lack of data and information. And this sounds very basic, but this is the major problem. Complexity of the sector. This is also something, for example, e-waste recycling. Uh, all of us use mobile phones, laptops, computers, and we keep throwing headphones. We lose headphones every 3 months, 6 months, and we keep replacing our mobile phones. And all this adds up, all this waste adds up. There is this entire chain of economy involved in dismantling a mobile phone. So if a mobile phone is being recycled, there would be a group of people who would use the screen or sell the screen later on, will salvage whatever part can still be recycled from this mobile phone. Then there are certain groups of people, and their work is, they mainly, what they do is they melt all the circuits and then extract precious metals from the circuit board. And that forms a different kind of work. So a lot of people work in tandem uh, from a single, in this single mobile phone, there will be, I think, 6, 7 types of work associated with just recycling this mobile phone, this one single mobile phone. So this is also very complex, the sector. There is lack of political will, uh, because when you talk about politics, and this is a problem with all political parties, everybody targets short term goals. Why? Because every government knows that after a couple of years there's going to be elections and there is no surety that these people are going to come back. So there's always this uncertainty. So they want to do something, or they want to invest time and money on projects that are short term, like a, or something, that can be seen right on your face, right in front of you, like a flyover, for example. You can see a flyover, that okay, fine, this politician has built this, or this political party has built this flyover. So that's like a token for which you vote in the next cycle of elections, right, in the next elections. And this is a problem with political will is also lacking behind a lot of projects, only because these projects take time. These projects, there are a lot of stakeholders involved in it. There's a lot of local politics involved in it. And nobody, the ones in power, they don't want to invest so much of time and money in sorting this out. Insufficient legal framework and weak implementation. Weak implementation is something, just doing things for the sake of doing. And this is something that I really don't need to explain it. You all know, you all have probably experienced it in your own life, in different walks of life, in fact. So you know what weak implementation means. Uh, this very careless kind of attitude, the bureaucracy, different kind of hurdles, where poor man is forced to run pillar to post for every little work. And anyway, but lack of data and information, the one that sounds the most basic, is the most important. Why? Let me give you an example. When was the last Indian census held in India? Population census. Like, if I were to ask you what's the population of India, you will give me a figure, right? That this many billion people live in India. But that figure actually comes from a population census conducted in 2011. And then, of course, that figure has been updated on the basis of what? On the basis of birth percentage, like each year how many child could be taking birth, and on certain kind of projection. But we don't know for sure how many people since 2011, and this is 2023 now, February to start of 2023. uh, the census is not happening. It was supposed to happen in 2021, but then it was stopped for COVID-19, giving the reasons of COVID-19. And the last time, census is so important, it's considered so important. The last time census was hold off in India, it was during the time of Second World War. Even during Bangladesh war, the census continued. So an exercise as important as this was stopped in 2021 because of uh, COVID-19, which was definitely, which was a very valid point. But at the same time, we all have seen how political rallies have continued and a lot of other projects have continued, but an exercise of this importance has not. And if you, a simple Google search, I really urge you all to do a single, a simple Google search of why population census has not taken place. And you will come across different kinds of articles. Uh, Go to websites, go to media houses that are credible, that you trust. Don't rely on social media posts. And if you read, this credible mainstream media reports or any kind of, unbiased media report, you'll see the reason that there is a lot of politics involved. And anyway, apart from this entire, all these are very complex matters. But what is it doing really? uh, it's contributing majorly uh, in not letting this sector being assessed, how many people are working, especially during I'll come to that later. But how has this work structure changed in India after such major events? All of us here in this room today have witnessed so many very very significant events in the last 2 3 years, right? Everything has changed. We can't even imagine the kind of times we have lived through. I mean, it's something that maybe 10 years ago we saw in movies. And then, we were actually living in that time. So we've seen some very, very bad time. And what really happened to a lot of people? Uh, so many people died during the second wave. So a census data is extremely important for any kind of effective policy making, and that is not happening. And there is a big, big political story behind it. Now, this is an image, and I'm sure that you remember this. Uh, can you remember this photo? When is it from? This is a very, very popular image. Can anybody guess? This was during the demonetization in 2016, where this old man is crying because he's not able to withdraw money from his bank. And this photo was taken by Parveen Kumar of Hindustan Times. And then this is the second photo. This is the pandemic. These were the two events that impacted this SDG goal of decent work and uh, you know uh, economic economic progress quite a lot, very significantly. What demonetization did was it kind of created a cash crunch, difficulty in getting cash. We all remember these long queues in front of ATMs, slowdown in economic activity because obviously we did not have loose cash, and we could not really. The business was disrupted very badly at that point of time. It did increase financial inclusion though, because a lot of people who did not have bank accounts were forced to kind of, open bank account overnight. And then cashless transactions were encouraged. And so it did end up, getting a lot of people financially included into the sector. But still, if you look at a lot of, there are a lot of graph and there are a lot of numbers. The What we had to pay off for that was so much big. We had to face kind of a full-fledged inflation after that. So and that's the reason why demonetization kind of, it gathers so much of criticism, and there's so much of controversy around it. Also, a lot of people, I think, women, I see a lot of women students, a lot of girl students today in the room. And we all have seen, our mothers stacking cash in our home, and overnight all those 500 rupee note were gone. And that was also, I mean, I can talk about my family. uh, a lot of women who saved money from the household income, they did not really have bank account. And even if they had bank account, they did not really keep cash there. Why? Because they didn't want that money to be monitored by their husbands, because bank account and passbooks could be monitored by the men in the family, right? So whatever little power that the women had in the form of this loose cash was gone during demonetization. What the pandemic did, we all know: job loss, job insecurity, reduced income, shortage of demand of jobs, life risk, hunger. And I was in Noida at that time, and I used to, just in front of my balcony, there was this highway. Uh, my my friend, obviously, I'm a very privileged woman. Uh, we lived in flats. We had the privilege of getting food on time. We had the privilege of feeding our families. We had the privilege of having a roof on our head. Uh, but as I stood in the, and we had the privilege to actually indulge in all those TikTok trends that were coming up at that time. You remember Dalgona coffee and whatnot. Uh, and we spent the first phase of pandemic that way. But at the same time, these scenes, I can never, and this comes back to haunt me again and again when I saw this hordes of people walking in the middle of the night, walking very silently on the road, migrant workers, and they are walking, at least 50, 60 people walking at the same time, but there is, there is so much of silence. They're all walking very quietly, trying not to make any kind of noise, not to wake the rich people in the apartments up, so that they don't attract any kind of trouble from police. And I think that was the greatest human tragedy. If anybody who has seen that time, it's a blot on humanity, actually, uh, that these people had to see such times, and we couldn't really leave our privileges and step out and do anything for them. But anyway, the pandemic and the demonetization, these are the two events that actually affected this goal, kind of, pulled India back from their own targets of SDG. Now, what are the strategies? How can we, solve this? The first point is strengthening social protection. How can you strengthen social protection? By providing them insurance, health insurance, crop insurance. By the way, after the pandemic, we also have seen the largest farmers' protest in our country, where more than 750 farmers were killed. And the end of the farmers' protest was also marked with such an horrific event where a politician's uh, son, rammed farmers on the road. But anyway, so the point is that the unorganized economy in our country, the unorganized sector in our country is not taken care of the way it should be, the way they should be. And one of the strategies of addressing that is giving people social protection. But then this is also a challenge in itself. Say, for example, there are a lot of schemes, new schemes, that the government has floated, which provide crop protection. And I'm not very sure about the data. I think around 26% of people have crop protection. Farmers have crop protection, probably, but not willing to take crop protection. Um, Crop insurance is becoming a major challenge. And why? Because the payment of insurance is not timely. Especially now, since weather extremities have increased, places which earlier did not witness droughts are facing increasing droughts. Uh, we know, how rainfall patterns have gone haywire completely. Hailstorms are happening in places where it never, in most unusual places, right? So weather extremities have increased quite a lot in across the country. And while if we get, say, for example, hailstorm in a very unlikely time, we go out and we play and we laugh, with our family. But then the most, the brunt of this loss is borne by the farmers, because large amount of crops get destroyed, and they have to bear heavy losses. But when they, and even if, and this has become a perennial, this has been going on for several years now, that despite having crop insurance, they're not paid on time. If a farmer is not paid on time, then what's the point of having the insurance, right? Because the insurance money, they first have to, the kind of the premium money is also part of, and it's a complicated structure, but anyway, I mean, it's quite expensive for the farmers. And if they're investing that much of money, and if they're not getting the insurance when they actually need it, then what's the point of the insurance? Then it just becomes numbers on papers. So anyway, strengthening social protection is one of the ways. There should be proper panels which sit with the farmers, which talk about weather extremities. There should be scientists and policymakers should sit on the same table to discuss these matters and come up with strategies to address weather extremities and how farmers could be helped more across the country, and then kind of give some kind of directive to the insurance companies and blah blah blah, whatever the I mean the procedure is. But that kind of effort is not being taken. Promoting financial inclusion, which is being done, and but still a lot needs to be done. Supporting informal enterprise or informal sector, uh, so policy level changes have to be made so that more people working in informal sectors can come forward for formal inclusion, and also encouraging decent work, which is counted for. So the policymakers know that you exist, so there is value of your life. During pandemic, all these people who were not part of the formal chain, they slipped through the crack only because they were not accounted for, and it actually felt as if they didn't matter, their life didn't matter. So all these things, all these efforts, a lot of people, the policymakers, the lawyers, the scientists, the government have to come together so that these things can be done effectively. One of the good case studies, one of the examples of how informal economy was included, was Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which was launched in 2006. And it was a rural job guarantee program that provides 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in a financial year to every rural household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. And this photograph that you see here is actually from Sundarbans in West Bengal, which is one of the largest estuaries. And these people are planting, these women are planting saplings, mangrove saplings, which is also first line of defense against floods. So Manrega is one of the good case studies, one of the good examples, and similar such there are other such examples as well, which should be implemented effectively. And finally, to end my talk, as Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winning economist, has said, the decent work and economic growth are two sides of the same coin. A vibrant economy that creates jobs and opportunities must also provide workers with the basic rights and protections they need to support themselves and their families. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Soma, there is a question in the chat box.
No,
Good evening, ma'am.
yes. Yes, Nabila. Oh, sorry. Neha.
Ma'am, my question is about moonlighting. In India, moonlighting by employees have increased significantly after the pandemic. While many companies claim
Mhm.
that moonlighting is unethical, for example, we have seen that Wipro firing over 300 employees due to moonlighting. So, I would like to know your opinion on whether you consider moonlighting ethical or unethical.
Neha, this is a very good question. Thank you so much. This is a great question. Uh, but just as every issue has several aspects, this is also an issue which should be looked at from a variety of perspectives. While moonlighting, I completely believe that moonlighting is unethical, and because a lot of companies make you sign non-disclosure agreement, and you should have uh, there is always this question of conflict of interest. If you're not working for a competing company and all that, all these aspects are there which should be taken care of, and so moonlighting is completely unethical. But at the same time, why do people indulge in moonlighting? Why do people do moonlighting? Is it only because they want to uh, is it that the working class is always hungry for money and they just want to do whatever they can to fleece their companies, the corporates that they work for? What exactly is the reason behind moonlighting? And during the pandemic, because the moonlighting emerged, it came up as a practice during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we have also seen a very ugly face of the corporate, the way that they have failed to take care of their employees, the way that they have not sanitized office spaces as much as they should have, to save pennies, the way that certain people in the higher rung or higher designations sat at home and made their juniors or subordinates come to office despite the pandemic every day, undue enjoying undue privileges. So this kind of imbalance we have seen everywhere. So before, while moonlighting is obviously, there it's unethical, but at the same time we should also see and understand why the problem of moonlighting has emerged now. Why has it come up now? What exactly is going wrong in these corporates?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neha. I think somebody has typed a question. Vismaya has said, as student, how to achieve decent work. Vismaya, as a student, what you should do, concentrate on your studies and do some courses, or have career counseling. Try to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and follow your dream. If you're happy with what you are earning, and if you are contributing, you know ni- effectively to the economy, everybody do our own bit, right? Then you are anyway doing decent work, and you are helping in achieving economic growth for yourself and your country. Okay, so there is this first question. Apologies for this long question. Please tell us, can there be a good economic growth in terms of high monetary growth without directly contradicting the SDG goals? Having high monetary growth is directly proportional to achieving SDG goals and not otherwise. So it is not contradicting SDG goals in any way. If you get high salary, you must give me a treat. But anyway, but what you are actually doing is you're helping your country to go towards SDG goals. Take, for example, reducing carbon emissions from personal mobility. Okay. Electric run cars are pricey. Yes, this is the problem. This is a policy problem, because battery run cars or electric cars must be subsidized. But then there is this entire automobile lobby which works in a country. That's the reason why every city, every country, populous cities, you'll see cycling is promoted. But in our country, do you see any cycle track, any dedicated cycle track on the roads? So heavy vehicles or larger vehicles are kind of, promoted. Multi-level parking is offered for car owners instead of capping the number of cars that each family should have. Also, buying a car in India is still a luxury. Forget buying an electric car. Power outage. Yes, okay. But Shubhankar, I think your question is, I don't really understand what exactly you are asking, but I see the first question, which is no, high monetary growth is nowhere contradicting SDG goals. And yes, the second half of your question is basically, highlighting the implementation problems in our country. Any other question? Any other observation? Is there something that you would like to share, students? Hello,
Hello, good
ma'am.
evening. I'm not exactly a student. I'm one of the senior teachers of the college, and I don't even belong to the category that you mentioned, the millennials, to the senior category. I was just observing the graph that you presented, where Kerala rate stands quite high with regard to achieving SDG goals. Uh, Two parts to my question. It's an I mean, I would just like to get your opinion on whether you have taken the Kudumbasri mission into consideration. Have you studied that, or has that ever become a part of your study? is it in some ways, responsible for that kind of um, presence of Kerala right at the top there? Kudumbasri
Ma'am,
mission.
which
Yeah,
mission did
and
you,
the Kudumbasri,
Kutumbushri? Okay.
yeah, where women are brought out into the workforce.
Okay,
Secondly,
yeah.
Kerala is not exactly a highly productive state compared to some of the states that feature there at the bottom rung of that list. Bihar and especially UP and so on. We're more of a consumer state. So does that also, play a responsible role in taking Kerala to that level? We are more consumers than producers, actually.
Bindu ma'am, thank you again. A wonderful question. Uh, and this is a difficult question as well for me. The scheme that you spoke about, I don't really know about that scheme, but several states have similar schemes with different names in their own regions. West Bengal has some. I'm sure other states also have some. Integrating women in the workforce is extremely important because women anyway contribute to economy quite a lot. Because then they're anyway underpaid, because if you go to a manual construction site, you'll see women working relentlessly, but often they're not paid as much as the men. Their labor basically goes unseen. Also, if you look at different other kinds of labor that women give, which are not even considered labor at all, so that's also there, the silent labor that women contribute. And I don't really know about the scheme as much, but then the line that the way you described it, it kind of sounded really nice, and I'm sure it contributes to the high numbers that Kerala has achieved. Now, at the same time, when we talk about what basically, so how can we measure which country, which state is, getting more scores than the others? So there are a variety of indices, and they are very complex indices, and it's going to take a separate lecture to probably, discuss about them. But then, yes, overall, I think it's the quality of life that people receive, the quality of work that people are doing. If they are getting as much, money as they want, if they're getting as much payment for the work, the time of payment, the right to hold truth to power. And there are a variety of reasons that work together to contribute to somebody's well-being and sense of happiness, and various other factors, I think. So yeah, that's a difficult question. And
Yeah.
uh,
Thank you. As I told you, it was not exactly a question. I just wanted to bring that
yeah,
into onto the table, for discussion. That's
thank
all.
you, Bindu ma'am, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for your response.
Am I audible?
It's been
Actually,
a
some
fascinating
problem.
session. Actually, learned so much. And quite
Thank you, ma'am.
interesting to know about the work that you're doing there. Finland, I guess, again, is a country that rates very high, right, on the happiness index.
Yes, it's the happiest country, but
Yeah.
then, yeah, when I was talking about indices, and in fact, this is something that it's known as the happiest country in the world, but at the same time, people hardly smile. So a lot of people, at least, for people from South Asia or Asian cultures, we are very emotive, and we see, Finnish people that not so emotive, and we think that, "Oh my God, this is the happiest country," but I hardly see people smiling on the road or that. But it's mainly because the indices are such that it's mainly because the sense of trust on community. And if I leave my purse somewhere, I'll get it, day after tomorrow. And the sense of, growing together, sense of community, which contributes to the happiness index. uh, so yeah, these indices are also very complicated, and there are several tiers to measure it. And the same thing happens in case of Finland as well.
And these indices are also made largely by certain interests, right? The Europeans and the Americans predominate in that in codifying
Abs-
what. Yeah.
Absolutely, ma'am. That lens is everywhere.
Yeah.
True.
So thank you, Bindu ma'am, for joining with us. Am I
Alina,
audible?
I see you talking, but you are on mute.
Some problem with my
You are on
mic
mute, ma'am. You are
actually.
on mute.
Mic is not working.
Alina, I think you will have to remove the earphone and probably speak into the system.
Problem with the Google Meet, I think it's not working. It shows that how can I give
Ma'am, could you please give a text so that students, if you have any other further questions, and Bindu ma'am, if you have any, you can ask Soma ma'am.
I hope to see ma'am in our college sometime soon when she comes down to India. We welcome you to our college and we hope to carry this dialogue further, at that time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I mean, I always dream of coming to Kerala. So it would be such a pleasure to come and interact with the students face to face. It would be such a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, I think
I
Ma'am,
there's a
we
would
have got
question
a
in the
question
chat.
from our first student.
Okay, Aisha is asking, many people consider career cushioning nowadays. For some people, it is like looking for side hustle. Is there a right way for career cushioning? Now, the way, what exact is career cushioning a formal word? Is it a term that means something? Because the way I understand it, career cushioning is probably what you mean is having a stable career, right? Or having a career which you know is going to last, having a stable job. Uh, is that true, Aisha? Upgrading skills. Okay, yes. Yeah, well, skill upgradation is something that everybody has to keep doing anyway. So, for example, if I'm a teacher, during the pandemic, a lot of excellent teachers, and who were very aged as well, beautiful, wonderful professors who could transform class into a magical place. They had to, come online and struggle with these online tools. And a lot of professors who could not keep up with this new technology, they faced a lot of problem. A lot of people, a lot of teachers, professors actually got frustrated and quit. And this was a senior, even in journalism, first there was print journalism, and then there was online journalism, and there was this pressure on us to transform overnight or upgrade our skills. And so skill upgradation is something which is needed in all professions wherever you go. After you have completed 2 years in a profession, it's always good to keep your ears and eyes open for the newer tools or the newer kind of technology that is coming in your field. Take some time out, take a sabbatical if you want, or if you are not getting a sabbatical from your office, take some time out, some leaves or something, and then you do those courses online. And then maybe you can get an upgrade in terms of salary and position within your own country, or you can even get better opportunities in some other countries, right? So career cushioning is absolutely fine. Looking for side hustle is a different ballgame altogether. Why do people have to look for side hustle? Again, we have to think about, what's the root of the problem? Are they not getting paid properly? Are they not getting paid on time? Is there a lot of burden on them? How can they manage their finances effectively? So side hustle actually makes you question a lot of other kind of problems as well. We cannot just see problems and blame the person for doing it. We have to understand why the person is doing it so that we can help that person, right? So I hope I answered your question well.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful session. And your response has been very valuable to us. Last, uh, Last but not the least, I would like to call upon Ms. Sriya Suresh, the Faculty of Human Resource Management, to say the word of thanks. Originally, Alina ma'am was going to say, but her mic's not working. So,
Anyway, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining with us this evening. It was a we have got a great insight about this topic on decent work and economic growth. So that the main intention for this conducting this session is actually to get an idea about each and every SDG goals, and this is one of the best practice of our college. So the students will have a clear idea about what they are doing. It's not about just doing some activities. They should have an idea about what exactly the each and every goals is. So accordingly, they can contribute well into it, and that is how we are planning to have a successfully implementing this best practice of our institution. And thank you so much for finding time for us and joining with us and give a wonderful session on this decent work and economic growth, ma'am. And we are also looking forward to see you directly in your presence in our college and have a much more enlightening sessions from your side. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Shriya ma'am. Thank you so much
If I,
for
if I
giving me
may,
this
if I
opportunity.
may add a point, Shreya, just give me permission to add a point. I was quite fascinated and really happy to note the way, and I want the students also to particularly take note of the fact that, Ms. Soma Basu, when she spoke in a very inclusive way, throughout. So decent work ethics, I mean, that just cannot exist unless there is that policy of inclusion or inclusivity. And that stood out in your talk throughout, from the examples that you gave to, right down to the last query that you answered. So, that's a heartening thing actually, and we hope that, we are sure that you will go on to policy making, probably in such fields when you make, your presence felt there. That spirit of inclusivity is going to matter a great deal. So we wish you the very best in your career ahead, which we are sure will bring much, prosperity in a good way to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll wind
Thank
up.
you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you, Shriya. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.